RugbyRenegade.com, the #1 online strength and conditioning program for rugby. Are you ready to get bigger, stronger, fitter, and faster and dominate your opposition? Welcome to the Rugby Renegade Podcast, where we build machines.
Today's episode is sponsored by Optimum Nutrition. To get a 40% discount across their entire batch-tested range, use the code RENEGADE40 at www.onacademy.co.uk/elite portal. And of course, members of the Rugby Renegade online subscription program get an exclusive 50% discount plus free access to the Optimum Nutrition online nutrition course. Yes, welcome to episode 68 of the Rugby Renegade podcast. My name is Jamie Bain, and today I interview Noel Doherty of ND Sports Performance and creator of the Hamstring Solo. All about Hamstring Solo, of course, and tons more, learning about what we can learn as S&C coaches from engineers and how to use sports tech to get best results. And they've got some exciting news about a new product coming out as well. So give it a listen and let us know what you think. Hi Noel, welcome to the Rugby Renegade podcast. It's great to have you on. It'll probably be a slightly different affair to normal. Usually you have S&C coaches and the odd physio and nutritionists. So it'll be nice to talk to someone on the technology side. So let's start by you telling us a bit about your background, how you got into the sort of thing you're doing, and then how you got into developing the Hamstring Solo.
I will do so. First of all, thanks for having me on, Jamie. I'm sure it is a bit left field, I suppose, compared to some of your previous guests, but I think anyone that's interested in improving performance and preventing injury, I think this may be of value to them. My background, it's a different background compared to your previous guests. I've actually had the pleasure of working with some of them, and I know some of them well. Nick Grantham, whom I love listening to, and he's also been a great help to us over the years. So so my background anyway, it's in mechanical engineering, design, and there's an economics degree there thrown into the mix as well. But my passion is sport. I played sport at a relatively high enough level over here in Ireland. It's our national sport, and hurling, I'm sure you or your listeners might be familiar with it. I would have sustained a few injuries in my time. That's kind of my background in a nutshell, if you like. So coming at this from a different perspective, but I suppose it's the injuries and it's understanding, I suppose, the nature of the beast, as in the, what it takes to put your body through the ringer time and time again, and being available for selection and just being competitive and trying to win. That's kind of led me down this path.
Yeah, and obviously using technology to do that. So it'd be interesting to hear. I think it's always good to hear, from different industries and someone like yourself who's obviously been passionate about sport, and then you've applied what you've learned into it. It's because we kind of often talk about it with the guests, as we get a bit insular and we just, go to other S&C coaches for ideas. And they've obviously learned off other S&C coaches. So it's nice to get that kind of outside view. And you mentioned injuries a couple of times there, and has that been a big sort of driver for you in developing the Hamstring Solo?
Yeah, purely. I mean, actually back in 2012, it was a hamstring injury that prevented me from winning what could have been my third championship medal with Kilkenny.
Oh, right.
But at the time it meant everything to me, and I was put on a hamstring conditioning program, and part of that program required a second person to assist me with the exercise. So we were doing some eccentric work, and the problem was that person wasn't always available when I wanted them. So after researching the usual places, couldn't find anything to assist me. So as I said, I have an engineering and design background, so I set about designing my own solution. And from there, I basically developed what's now known as the Hamstring Solo Pro exercise aid, and that basically enabled me to safely train anywhere, anytime, effectively. It was very efficient, And to be fair, I never really looked back, you know. I mean, I was consistently breaking down with a hamstring injury, and I was like many players, and I'm sure people listening to this, I was quite quad dominant. You know, a lot of my conditioning program would have been focusing on the quads, but I had very weak hamstrings, and I wasn't putting the work into making my hamstrings more robust or resilient, you know. So, you know, fast forward a bit, and it was a driving force, if you like, that you know, propelled me, I suppose, to form a company called ND Sports Performance, and we specialize in sports evaluation technology now. So with a focus on field and gym-based training and analysis solutions, you know. So we took it from a fairly rudimentary piece of equipment and basically brought it to the 21st century, and we've cloud-based storage platform and iOS and Android apps now that makes it very user-friendly. So you can use our systems on your mobile phones and your tablets and so on. So it's so that's what we're doing. Yeah, we basically our systems, they provide real-time objective tracking where this objective data is used to primarily improve sporting performance, but it's always about it's about performance, but keeping players on the field. I mean, to put it simply, even from my own time, but it was injury meant time lost from sport, and time lost from sport equals reduced performance. And yes, from an economic point of view, these time loss injuries have a very negative effect, but it's not only due to the direct cost, but also it reduces squad availability. And ultimately, if you reduce squad availability, your likelihood of success is drastically diminished. So, like our objective data, it enables the the medical staff, strength and conditioning, sports scientists, physiotherapy, but it enables them to evaluate training effectiveness. So, is our S&C program having the desired effect? We're able to set goals. So we've got normative data now that shows from an elite perspective. So from whether it's rugby or football or whatever the core of the sport is, we've got data that shows you where you should be at, and there's the science is there to show that if you're below a certain threshold, that you're at higher risk of injury. This is all athlete specific, but we're also able to assess proven injury risk factors. So eccentric strength being one of those, and asymmetry. Also being able to monitor fatigue, and so you can tailor specific programs then accordingly, and obviously monitoring fatigue before, after, and during training. We've seen so we're working with some high level teams in the UK. So we're working with the English rugby team, and so we're getting some really good information back from these guys, and we're how they're utilizing the system from an elite club perspective, and the likes of England Rugby, Saracens, Scotland Rugby, Leicester Tigers, and we're growing, and they're able to as well monitor rehabilitation. So they're able to bring an athlete back to full fitness, show them the uninjured leg compared to the injured leg, and it's this kind of biofeedback that's really gets the buy-in from the player, to basically understand why they're putting themselves through the programs. They need to get back to full fitness, and if they can see that improvement and see those targets, well, again, as I know the nature of the beast, I said they will, more often than not, strive to hit those targets.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting stuff. But perhaps you could kind of explain what you're actually measuring with a hamstring solo, and kind of what other exercise and things you can perform with it. Because I guess most people assume, Nordic curls, but you can do other stuff. Perhaps you could talk a bit about that.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I suppose the first of our systems, is the Hamstring Solo Elite, right? And that is the safest. It's the most accurate way to objectively monitor hamstring vulnerability in the field. such as, and just for example, so a lack of muscle strength, but strength is important, but it's by no means the only metric that we look at. We also look at the left to right strength and balance, so residual fatigue and or, if you like, a lack of fatigue resilience in the hamstring group of muscles. So we have research there actually that compares the heavily researched Nordic exercise. We compare that to the hip extension lower, so it's rotating around the knee and the hip joint, but there's really good benefits from one exercise over the other. So yeah, some of our I suppose recurring themes, if you like, is that periodic max strength testing is useful, but it's limited because hamstring strength values are vulnerable to sudden changes. And yes, as I mentioned, strength is essential, but it's not the universal cure. So we do, and we've seen it used in the field very effectively. English rugby, they would have I suppose built a fatigue resilience profile, throughout busy periods where I'm just thinking back throughout the Six Nations there, and so they were using the system to do single leg isometric pulls. So it's a very quick assessment, very non-fatiguing exercise to do. Very low injury, very low risk, but it was enabling them to build a fatigue resilience profile, and they were able to do that. So a normal Nordic or hip extension it's a high load exercise, whereas a single leg isometric pull, it still gets your objective data. So it still gives you good feedback, and it's very sensitive to asymmetry and fatigue and so on. But you can also do it before training or repeat sprint activity, before games. And we've seen the guys using it there, before a game, at halftime, and throughout training periods. If there was players at high risk, they would be bringing those players off every 10 minutes to do a simple left right pull, eccentric pull, and just to build their fatigue resilience profile throughout a full game, and to determine whether that player is then, are they a full 90-minute player, or maybe their fatigue, their robustness and resilience isn't there at the moment, and we need to use that player accordingly.
Yeah, that's interesting. And perhaps it'd be helpful to sort of hear how some of these teams have used it to kind of impact their training. Obviously, you said to once you identify some sort of issue, and then you've got the means to kind of test it ongoing, but how have they programmed off the back of it?
Yeah, so I suppose we've lots of really good examples. So again, I said we're going into our fourth year working with Saracens in the UK, and one of the things that they've identified is that periodic assessment, so like baseline measurements and maybe taking repeat measures every 6-8 weeks is useful, but it's limited, because like we know that hamstring strength values they're vulnerable to sudden changes. And so basically, I suppose one of the key lessons learned from our time with some of these elite teams and organizations is that periodic assessment was replaced with ongoing monitoring. So they basically integrated that into gym training. Yeah. And that basically enables ongoing refinement and customization of their training programs. So basically, we're providing objective real-time tracking. So I suppose to give a good example of another, just a team in the UK that were apprehensive, if you like, at first. And I know I've spoken to Ali James. He's actually the head physiotherapist there for Wasps, and he would have been apprehensive. I suppose they would have brought us across. We do what's called a squad assessment, so we can go in and we can assess the full squad, and we give a full report back then, and and then we can go back in. We were brought back in, I think it was about 6-8 weeks later, and we had identified some of these players that had grown, had a significant asymmetry developed over that short space of time, and I suppose the player wasn't he wasn't reporting any great issues. And, maybe from our perspective, after identifying these players, because it's great to show all these charts and graphs and so on, but unless it's meaningful data, well, then what's the point? Okay, it has to be accurate, it has to be safe to use, it has to be comfortable, but if the data is not accurate at the end of the day, well, then we're basically wasting our time, So I suppose the fact that our system being exceptionally accurate, we were able to identify this change in asymmetry. And it was from that then, and the fact that players broke down after this. So we would have identified a number of players who had developed this asymmetry, but they would have broken down shortly after this report, and they were flagged as being high risk. And at the time, I suppose Ali would be the first to say, yeah, they took it on board, but when the player wasn't reporting any side effects or any negative effects, they kind of continued as normal until they started breaking down. And now they've integrated that full system into their programs. And again, it's an ongoing monitoring, ongoing usage. So if you break down our system, it's about tracking. So it's a very accurate way of tracking, get an objective measurement on the player and how they're performing and fatiguing and so on, and just tracking the hamstring vulnerability in the field, if you like. And that's what we do. We're given that information, that objective information, and back to the staff, and it's, they're tailoring the programs accordingly.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's okay. It's recently did a kind of special podcast on velocity-based training, and you kind of mentioned earlier that for the player as well, having that objective feedback straight away is really beneficial. But it's just incorporating that data into the training program, rather than just say having testing 6-8 weeks apart. You can kind of see it improving steadily and keep an eye on it. And because you said on the day they tested, they might have tested a lot better than the next day, because it's so transient. And that's what you see with velocity based training. You need that auto regulation side of it, so it's definitely makes a lot of sense there, and I can see how it can be beneficial using it regularly. What about obviously a very competitive market, sports tech? How does the Hamstring Solo differentiate from other systems on the market?
So let me see. So obviously there's a biased opinion here, but we I suppose we would have paused going to market by about 18 months, and we did that because I suppose I like my sleep, and I like to sleep sound in the fact that our systems out there are what they're looking for. They expect quality and repeatability and a good after-sales service, or a quality after-sales service. And so we initially were going to market with a system that we weren't overly happy with, and we made the decision to say, look, unless we get this to a stage where we're happy with it, we're not releasing it to market. So, and we did that. And yes, there was competition in the market. There's not a lot of competition. We've got one direct competitor, but we went to market when we were ready to go, and when we were happy with our systems, that they were going to get that we were going to be able to give the quality that's expected, that's demanded out there. And we believe we've done that. We've re-engineered, so as I said, I come at this from an engineering perspective, and, as I said, for collecting data, if you are collecting data, well, then it has to be accurate data. So we've gone to great rounds, to ensure that every bit of data that you collect on our system is accurate data. So whether it's rep 1, rep 2, rep 5, rep 10, or year 1, year 2, year 3, you're collecting accurate data because you're collecting from the same position. So any off-axis movement, and I won't get too technical here, but on a sensor can introduce measurement error, and our system prevents that. Our system guarantees exceptional accuracy. We also have some key differences where our system is set at a decline, and it's all about the players, and it's from my own perspective as well, using the equipment. If it's not comfortable, you're not going to get the players wanting to use it. It's a high load exercise, and unless the system is comfortable and it's quick to get in, out of, and quick or to get in and get out of it. You're not going to get your buy-in from your players. So I suppose the brand for us is everything, and we're working hard to create brand awareness. But I suppose, I did say a biased opinion, but we are winning contracts, and anytime that we are compared, and you look at England Rugby, Scotland Rugby Union, Saracens, the English Institute of Sport, they're all coming away from competing systems and signing up with the Hamstring Solo because we are providing a more superior quality system, but it's our after sales as well as winning out on the day. We're not a one product company. We have follow on products, and I suppose we're delighted to announce here today that we're going to be launching a new multi-muscle monitoring system.
Okay.
Again, it's providing real-time objective data on everything from head to toe, from ankle mobility to hip abduction, adduction, hip flexion, eccentric quad imbalance and strength, and hamstring hip flexion, standing, seated, shoulder, neck. So we're very excited about this one, and it's based on feedback from our existing customers, our existing clients, what their needs, what their need is, and we're trying to listen to them and based on the quality of what we're doing, provide them with a system that will, give them that feedback that they're looking for. Like this new system can fit on a small transport case that'll fit on a commercial flight. It'll travel to any gym and be used in any gym in the world. So yeah, just excited about launching this one and just waiting again for the powers that be, the patent attorney and so on, to give us a thumbs up before we can release. But we're talking weeks.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah,
it's exciting stuff. Definitely be interested to hear more about that. And where do you see ND Sports Performance going in the next 3 to 5 years in this sort of space? More products, or just refining what you've got, improving the data behind it?
So look, it's all about increasing our brand exposure, and hopefully this will lead to rolling out throughout the world, to different unions, and based on our current client base, we want to continue to grow with our with quality systems and quality after sales support. So we want to take this to the we're in Ireland and the UK already, but we want to go further afield to Europe and the US and so on. But so just to grow it, and we've more products, and we've got a very progressive roadmap as well, and we're looking forward to to growing the business and working with more and more clients, and developing new systems.
Yeah, that's cool. And I guess one thing we've talked a lot about asymmetries. Now, what having looked at all the data, what might be some kind of rough guidelines that our players could follow in terms of getting good symmetry between left and right?
Yeah, so like below 10% is it's pretty normal. I suppose a certain degree of asymmetry is normal, but large interlimb deficits, I suppose, do increase the risk of future injury, and are likely to diminish movement, proficiency. So I suppose restoring interlimb strength and balance typically requires a continued training focus. So what we're seeing is kind of changes like below 10% is pretty normal. Below 5%, below 2% is exceptional. But when you start going from 10 to 15, 15 to 20, you're at low risk, moderate risk. But we're seeing, we're seeing substantial increase when you go over to 20%. It really is a kind of a red flag, if you like, to that there's something going on with that player, and I suppose it's then is to restore those interlimb strength and balances is very important. And we see actually the English Institute of Sport, who to be fair is a huge feather in our cap and a huge I suppose, endorsement of our systems is they do a lot of single leg stuff where they do cable assisted training. And the system will allow you to hook in one leg and, be attached to a weighted pulley system and to focus on the weaker leg and to try and, restore that imbalance.
That's interesting. That's a good tip. And I guess while I've got, as you said, someone with engineering background and outside the box, I guess, to what we normally get on the podcast, it'd be great to ask you what advice would you give to strength coaches who obviously don't have that background in terms of using the technology, getting the best out of it, and kind of using the data. Sometimes maybe we jump blindly into some things that don't pan out. What advice in terms of how do we know things are accurate and stuff like that?
Yeah, so a good question. I suppose from us working with the elite, these elite practitioners and strength and conditioning coaches, and they speak about a holistic approach to health management, and we are part of that puzzle. Yes, they are the experts in the sports science world, but we are bringing our expertise, as in our monitoring systems and so on, that gives them the objective feedback. And basically what we're doing is in the past, these risk variables that we spoke about, they couldn't be readily monitored or tracked within a practical context, right? But today, by integrating, let's say, the objective feedback from the Hamstring Solo Elite together with the scientific evidence and the elite practitioner insights, we can now substantially reduce, be it hamstring injury rates or injury rates, and improve the effectiveness of the reconditioning processes, and I suppose significantly diminish this negative career limiting consequence of prior injuries, So it's I suppose I'd encourage them to avail of the data. It's objective data, it's fact-based data. We don't really recommend the actual Nordic exercise. We prefer the single leg, exercises and the hip extension. Our clients, our players are reporting more comfort, and it's a safer exercise and more sensitive to asymmetry. And again, we'd love to share this information. But yeah, I suppose for us, measurement is the first step, right? That leads to control and eventually improvement. If you can't measure something, how you can't control it. And if you can't control it, how do you improve it? So yeah, I'd encourage anyone out there that's in the industry to at least have a look. I mean, I'd love to share some of this information with them. I'd be happy to, if any of your listeners are interested in jumping on a short Zoom call, and perhaps we show them the system, how it works, and the potential, I suppose, of the system within their role, within their organization or their team. So I think they'll be impressed with what we can do and the information that we can offer.
Yeah, that's great, and that leads leads nicely to my next question: is how can people sort of learn more about you and get in contact with you?
Great, yeah. We'll look at ND Sports Performance, but if they ndsportsperformance.com, they can info@ndsportsperformance.com. They can check us out on. I'm not great on social media, but Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn, obviously, but there's all the obvious social media ways of following us, or getting in contact. But I suppose info at ND Sports Performance. We'd love to set up a Zoom call and go through some of the systems and see how it can benefit them.
Awesome. And of course, we will share all the links to those in the show notes. But just to wrap up, Noel, it's been great talking to you and kind of explaining about Hamstring Solo and your journey into developing it. Obviously doing some great stuff with some awesome teams and getting some good results, and a new product on the way, which sounds really exciting as well. So thanks for sharing that with us, and all the best with it.
Great stuff, Jamie. Thanks again. And thanks to anyone who's listened as well.
Cheers, Noel. Yes, thank you, Noel. I'm really excited to hear more about this product and see what you've got in store for us. And thanks for taking the time to talk to us about the Hamstring Solo. Until next time, guys, please subscribe to us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, whatever you use for podcasts. And, of course, give us a 5-star review. And keep checking us out at rugbyrenegade.com.
Thanks for listening to the Rugby Renegade Podcast. For more quality rugby strength and conditioning information, check us out at rugbyrenegade.com. Rugby Renegade, building machines.